Alrighty, guys, the Access Blockbusters Pod and the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel has never been afraid to say things that most people disagree with. Now, I'm not a contrarian for the sake of contrarianness. Is that a word? Contrarianness? But I do think that we should all respect each other's opinions, and there are just ways in which different movies and different shows hit us, and there are just thoughts that we have that not a lot of people agree with. I unabashedly love Eternals. I know not a lot of people do. That's fine. I think Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness are fine. I think they're fine. Most people hate them. That's okay. I think they're fine. I've never been afraid to just say what's on my mind because I think it's all in the sake of discussion and sharing our own thoughts and having positive and constructive discourse. So the topic of today's segment here is something that I don't know, frankly, if a lot of people will agree with or not. Maybe a lot of people will, and I'll be surprised. But I have a feeling that there will be a decent split. But my thesis for today's segment here is that I believe the Star Wars universe, and we'll talk about what that means, the Star Wars universe is vastly more interesting than any of the on-screen products that we've seen. So, just for some background on myself, I grew up on Star Wars. Star Wars, I was shown one of the first Star Wars movies when I was 5 years old, I think. So from a very young age, I grew up on Star Wars. I was watching the prequel movies when they were coming out. I was a big fan of the Star Wars movies. I actually, though, more than anything else, grew up on the Clone Wars. Because I wasn't alive when the original trilogy came out. And I was sort of keeping up, but I was much too young to really understand what was going on with the prequel trilogy when that was coming out. But I was watching them, I think, as I was growing up at a very young age. But what I really was cognizant of, and what I really remember growing up with was Star Wars: The Clone Wars. The animated movies and the animated show, to me, are the bedrock and the foundation of my Star Wars fandom. And yes, taking a look back, the Star Wars: The Clone Wars movie is probably not great, even though we are getting Rhoda the Hutt back in The Mandalorian and Grogu for some reason. But anyways, the Star Wars: The Clone Wars movie is probably not great. It's not beloved by many people. The show, Star Wars: The Clone Wars, has a lot of fans, myself included. I love Star Wars: The Clone Wars still. I did a rewatch of it, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. It's still amazing. Holds up amazingly well. But I grew up on Star Wars: The Clone Wars. And as the movies have been coming out, right, I was super excited when The Force Awakens came out. I was very excited when The Last Jedi came out. I'm one of the people who really likes The Last Jedi. Rise of Skywalker, again, I thought it was okay at the time, and as I've watched it more over the past few years, at least 2 or 3 times since then, it's okay. It's all right in my opinion. And you can go check out a bunch of videos that I've done on The Rise of Skywalker. But all that being said, I got to thinking about what the Star Wars universe, what Star Wars represents to me. And I was thinking the other day, why is it that I love Star Wars? And to be honest with you, we've done our rankings of Star Wars and we've done tier lists and things like that. Honestly, the on-screen products of Star Wars that I want to sit down and watch as stories today are not as many as I thought. I love Andor. I really love Rogue One. I like the original trilogy, although again, it's hard not to watch the original trilogy for me as through the lens of somebody who's watching it 40 or 50 years later after they came out, because they're older movies, and I love The Empire Strikes Back, and I like most of Return of the Jedi, and I think A New Hope is classic, right? But it's not; those aren't the movies that I would sit down and watch on a given day, because I don't have that inherent nostalgia for it. I didn't grow up watching those movies. I actually grew up watching the prequels and the Clone Wars, and I obviously did watch the original trilogy as well, but obviously when I was younger, the prequels were the newer thing. And yes, as I rewatched the prequels, Attack of the Clones and The Phantom Menace, I don't think those movies are super great. That's just my opinion. I know some people really like them. That's great. And same thing goes with Revenge of the Sith. I like Revenge of the Sith much more than the other two. I think it's okay. Force Awakens, to me, when I rewatched it a few years ago, not as good as I remember it being. Last Jedi, I still like a decent bit. And Rise of Skywalker is, it's okay. And since then, the Disney Plus era of Star Wars has only solidified this. I really like Andor. It's great. I like bits and pieces of Obi-Wan. I think Ahsoka as a whole was kind of disappointing. Acolyte, not great. But I really like Skeleton Crew. And yet, I sit here today, in 2025, almost 2026, and I still consider myself such a big fan of Star Wars. Why is that? I just ask myself, why is that? Because any other franchise, right? Any other franchise where you take a look at the canon as a whole and the catalogs, and you don't like or you don't love maybe 50% of the projects that have come out, That's not a good ratio, right? I mean, the MCU has been hit or miss lately, but the Infinity Saga, I loved almost every single one of those movies. It was incredible what they were able to do. Star Wars is not the same to me. I don't have inherent love for the movies or the shows of Star Wars in the same way that I do for the MCU, like Endgame and Infinity War. It's just different times when I grew up, when I was watching those movies. But to me, what I have such fondness for Star Wars were hanging out with my friends when I was younger and having pretend lightsaber fights, being able to walk around in Disneyland at Galaxy's Edge and see the Millennium Falcon, being able to watch the Clone Wars and play the video games and play Lego Star Wars, which it's one of my favorite games of all time. The original, I think the Complete Saga or whatever it was called, and I've played the Skywalker Saga as well. Just some of my favorite memories are playing those games. It's the universe. What makes the Acolyte any bit interesting to me, and again, I don't hate the Acolyte, but it's not my favorite thing. But what makes the Acolyte any bit interesting to me is the lore and the mythology. I love lightsabers. I love the Force. That's what, to me, that's the superpower of Star Wars. That is the superpower of what George Lucas built. Because you can take the prequel trilogy, a series of films that I don't think I love in terms of quality, but you can spin out an entire mythology to turn it into 7 seasons of an amazing, wonderful show that fleshes out the universe in the Clone Wars and shows you Anakin Skywalker and has this intricate mythology of the Sith and Darth Bane and Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious and Darth Vader. It's all right there. I think that, to me, the Star Wars universe, the reason that Star Wars, to me, my love for Star Wars will never die, because look, I mean, my love for the MCU will never die, but my love for the MCU is intrinsically tied, yes, to the characters, but really to the stories that they're telling within those within the MCU, and that's a conversation for another day. I really do think a lot of great things have come out of Phase 4 and Phase 5 and now Phase 6, like Fantastic Four, like WandaVision. A lot of great things have come out of it. Shang-Chi, Spider-Man No Way Home. It's not like the MCU is completely nosedived for me, but I think that it is fair to say that the MCU, my love for the MCU, is contingent on the quality of the products that they're giving out. I love the MCU, but it's not like I love the universe of the MCU, if that makes sense. I love the characters that inhabit it. I love the stories that we've been able to see on screen. But for Star Wars, it doesn't really matter who the characters are, in a sense. I loved Skeleton Crew, regardless of who the characters were, probably because I didn't know who the characters were, because it just took the universe of Star Wars and made something really fun. And I think, to me, part of the genius of Star Wars, of George Lucas, is creating this universe, this world, that transcends the stories that are actually in it. Some of you guys, by the way, are yelling and screaming at me because you guys have actual, real, more, I guess stronger, not real, because I have real attachment for the movies and the TV shows as well. But you guys have stronger attachments to those TV shows and movies. And that's great. That's awesome. I just personally, I took a step back and I thought, I actually don't know how many of the projects that I actually like out of Star Wars, but I have such a love for this universe that I thought it's so interesting and fascinating. I think Star Wars is one of the only properties that has been able to do this, to just create a world where it's not intrinsically tied to a specific character. It's not like Harry Potter and Hogwarts. I love the wizarding world as a concept. It is still pretty intrinsically tied to Harry Potter, although I did like some of the Fantastic Beasts movies. I haven't seen enough of Star Trek to know how I feel about that. I know that there have been a lot of spin-offs and things like that. But Star Wars, again, to me, it's just, you just take this world and you just run with it. And yeah, some of the projects aren't going to be great, but you know what? At the end of the day, a lightsaber is still a lightsaber, and the Force is still the Force. And this universe, this galaxy, it's amazing. So I just wanted to talk about that because I'm very curious to see, does anyone else agree with me? I think that the universe that Star Wars has created is far more interesting and far more impactful than the products that are actually coming out on screen. Guys, what do you think about this? Am I completely crazy? I might be. Let me know in the comments down below.